Afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining me. It's the August 4th update on Tropical Storm Isaias, which, as you can see by the radar image behind me, is on our doorstep. A couple things have changed a little bit that I wanted to get you up to date on as we head into this afternoon and this evening. One, storm seems to have picked up speed a little faster than models were anticipating yesterday. The worst of the storm is probably going to be here basically starting very soon, and the next, in some places are already starting to get some of the heavier convective elements through probably 6, 7 o'clock tonight. The precip starts to cut off, and the worst of it's definitely through by then. So this is really the next 5 hours or so are the worst times. Also, the storm has moved west a little bit. We started to talk about that yesterday afternoon, and as the storm has moved west and moved a little faster, that has increased our chances for some wind issues just a little bit. So I want to kind of keep you up to date on that. I think it has minimized our flooding potential unless you're in kind of more like Adirondacks area. This is a potentially huge flooding issue for the Adirondacks. The radar looks very ominous there. They're looking at 3 to 4 inches. It's been dry, so hopefully that'll minimize the flash flooding. But for us, I think we're looking at maybe 2. Some spots might get 3 inches of rain. We've only gotten about a half inch so far, getting 0.52 inches at my house. I know some places in Vermont have gotten a little bit more than that, but total we're looking at 2, some spots of 3 inches of rain. That's not really enough to cause any problems. Except for maybe some ponding on the roads, I wouldn't anticipate much with flooding. So that's really good. Wind could become a problem this afternoon, though, particularly as we look at some of it's a little hard to see, I know, in the video here, but you can see some of these are kind of convective elements within this kind of feeder band that's kind of like a fire hose effect of being drawn in by the tropical system off of the Atlantic. And some of those individual cells, what they do is there's lots of wind aloft, and so when you get the convection, they drag that wind down from the clouds down to the surface, and you can get wind gusts in the 40 to 50 mile an hour range, which is not enough to cause widespread damage, but it is enough to knock some trees down and some power lines. So I still don't think we're going to see widespread power outages, but I do think we could see some power lines. We could see some scattered outages. I think it's the kind of thing where hopefully you're back up and running with power within 12 to at the most 24 hours. So I don't think we don't need to plan for days without power, I don't think, but we should keep an eye on it. Also, you'll notice the 2 purple things here. One of the things that does happen, and there's enough spin in the atmosphere that tiny tornadoes do get spun up quite often. Our terrain very much protects us from this in Vermont. However, not impossible that we could see a quick spin up of a F0, F1 type tornado, which again, very short-lived, very scattered, but there's definitely the chance of that. So it's still not a great afternoon to be out and about. If you can just kind of hunker in for the next couple of hours, that's a good idea. I am going to try to take some questions today. So if predictions on tracking the flash flooding risk in northern Vermont. I think northern Vermont, I think the same kind of thing. It looks like with the track going just a little bit more west, maybe the far northwestern, very far northwestern corner of the state could see some issues. I think they'll get clipped by the heaviest of the rain, but I think this is mostly an Adirondacks problem in terms of flooding. I think any flooding in Vermont will be pretty minor. Let's take a look at a couple other things that we've got that I can pull up for you here. Here's the National Weather Service. This is a very small, let me see if I can zoom in on this a little bit. Like I said, this is going to be a little bit longer like the last few days. Because that's what we do when the weather's a little more interesting. So here's what the National Weather Service is predicting for. This is wind speed, probably more like wind gusts, but they're predicting, I think these are 25 to 35 mile an hour sustained winds over most of southern Vermont and into upstate New York. I think that is likely for a little bit. We'll see some sustained. It'll get gusty for a while here this afternoon. It's really the wind gusts that we've got to worry about, though, in those convective elements. In terms of, there's a different radar picture. Where did my map go here? They're not quite in order. Where did my wind go? Here we go. Sorry about that. Here's an idea of what has happened so far with the storm. Actually, let me show it to you on a different picture. Here's a kind of from the northeastern perspective. And you can see that offshore we've had lots of wind gusts to 60 to 70 miles an hour. We're not going to have to worry about that. As it comes onshore, the storm is weakening because it is overland now. But I do think 40 to 50 mile an hour gusts. Particularly the worst spots for those are going to be east-facing slopes. These are going to be winds out of the southeast and then eventually out of the east. So southeast facing slopes would be your most would be where that's most likely. So you're looking at basically the east side of the Greens, and then the east side of the Tectonics would also be potentially problematic. Although even in the valleys, or also any place where there's a valley kind of between the two. So and a south kind of a valley that especially runs northeast to southeast. So for us around in my kind of northern part of Windham County, we'd be talking about like kind of the Route 30 corridor through basically through Winhall. That's a bit of a that kind of follows a bit of a ravine there. Certainly you could see some wind gusts up the ravine there. Route 9 certainly as well. You could see some tunneling of wind kind of as you go through the mountains there too. Those are some spots, and certainly the higher peaks will see the higher gusts, but there's not like they don't run power lines over the tops of the mountains, so that's not really a problem. So yeah, so that's kind of some of the more significant stuff that's going to be happening. Just to give you an idea of we got 1,000 alerts going on at the same time. We actually don't have a tropical storm warning here in southern Vermont. They basically shut it off just to our south. We will see some tropical storm-like conditions here, though. We do have a tornado watch, like I said. That is a possibility. Our terrain does protect us some from that, but it's not impossible. And tropical system spawn tornadoes tend to be very weak and quick-lived. But if one happens to drop down right on top of you, obviously that's not great. So, but they are the kind of thing that usually they're weak enough that if you're inside, you should be safe from them. So, like I said, not the best time to be traveling. Keep an eye out for those. If you've got a phone, if it tells you there's a tornado warning, just make sure you're inside and protect not next to the window because they'll be rain wrapped and you won't be able to see them or anything like that, and it won't be like a thunderstorm tornado. So, again, I think that's a pretty high. That's a small likelihood, but it's definitely possible that somebody in southern Vermont could see something like that. Other stuff that we've got on, we do have a flash flood warning obviously in effect, or flash flood watch I should say in effect for basically all of Vermont. And so flash flooding is still a possibility, although I think that's lessened some with the more slightly western part of the track. Okay. Any other questions? Certainly feel free to ask. Let's see if I had anything else I wanted to show you. I have my whole list of stuff here. You can see they just posted another tornado warning for basically it looks like kind of Nashua area in New Hampshire, maybe just west of Nashua. And again, probably something very short-lived. Let me zoom right in. I'll show you what happens on these cells here. Give you a little slightly better idea of why you get tornado warnings if it's going to load. And what you can see here is you get a cell that kind of pops up, particularly some of these cells on their own. I mean, certainly some of these here in southern Vermont, they obviously, and what happens is Doppler radar indicates that there's a little bit of spin in that storm, and so they pop up the tornado warning. There may not be a tornado there, but there could be. And where you can see any of these places where you see the quick convective red elements is places where even if there's no spin, which is what would make a tornado warning potentially get popped, it does mean that any of those stronger winds are getting sucked down into the lower part of the atmosphere, and that's where you're going to get your wind gusts. So you want to keep an eye on anytime it looks like it's raining really hard out. That's where you could potentially get some of those stronger wind gusts. And as we can see, let's scroll down a little bit here, and you can lost my cursor. There we go. That is just kind of heading in our direction. And so there's several waves of it. We've got kind of the stuff here. Then we've got this band here that's kind of coming across the southern parts of western Massachusetts here. Let's say that's probably about an hour and a half away from us still. And then the main feeder band down here, which does look to be losing a little bit of its luster, but still certainly a lot of good convective elements in that. And that's probably headed our way within 3-4 hours or so. So that's kind of where the heaviest weather is. Once we clear through down into this section, the storm is still sort of going to the northeast. We may catch some of these wraparound showers, but those will be lighter in nature and really won't be that problematic. And the dry air is basically being sucked into the storm at this point. So moisture will cut off pretty good. And by tomorrow morning, we're probably looking at sunshine by tomorrow morning, or any clouds are going to be quick to exit. And tomorrow's actually a really nice day for the most part. So yeah, just keep an eye on things. Let me check and see again if anybody else has got any other questions for me. think at the moment everybody's good. So I will keep you up to date. Certainly I'll try to post, especially if there's any tornado warnings in southern Vermont, I will try to post those for you. But again, hopefully you've got an app on your phone that tells you if there's a tornado warning, because it should, you want to know that kind of information. Again, I don't think there'll be widespread or overly strong tornadoes, but they are the kind of thing that if you hear one, well, you should go inside. And you should stay away from the windows for the next 15, 20 minutes. Okay. Thanks everybody for joining me. Hope the river stays where it's supposed to. Everybody stays safe. Just don't travel unless you really need to this afternoon. Otherwise, we will see you. This will probably be the last live look-in I do with this. But otherwise, I'll be happy to answer questions. You can either just direct message me as the weather guy, or you can ask questions in the comment section, and I'm happy to answer them there as well. Otherwise, like I said, stay safe and stay home for the moment, and try to enjoy some really nice weather tomorrow, and Thursday and Friday and Saturday all look really, really nice as well. So basically, after we get through this, we're looking at some really nice summer, cooler, drier summer weather for Vermont. So and the rain is a little fast coming down, but it is beneficial at the moment. So okay. Sounds like a good place to stop, and we will see you again. I'll be back on Thursday evening for my patrons with my weekend forecast, and everybody else can see that on Friday evening. And yeah, so take it easy, and we'll see you again soon.